George Njenga, who's the Executive Dean of our business school, Strathmore University Business School within Strathmore University, an academic, an entrepreneur, and a key voice that works closely with the public sector government, not only in Kenya, but around the world on topics similar to what we are tackling today. Dr. Njenga, it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the university and this gathering to take the way forward. Karibu sana, Dr. Njenga.
Thank you, Martin, Laban Cliff, and all the team behind the scenes who have brought us together. Honorable Fred Matiang'i, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Interior, and the Coordination of National Security. Karibu sana, Bwana Cabinet Secretary. I know your schedule, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I also recognize the PS State Department of Livestock Agriculture, Agriculture, particularly because I lead the Institute of Agribusiness at Strathmore University, but I'd like to recognize that I've informed my Vice Chancellor who runs the whole university, and he brings his greetings to you. Honorable Cabinet Secretary, we have met sometimes at a personal level just to discuss whether we are going the right direction. And one of the things that I pointed to was the agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy. And within it, we obviously see certain factors that we want to discuss today, because I feel personally, we need to see where the government is trying to implement a strategy, what that strategy is, and to dialogue when the results and implementation results appear. And one of the things that I still note is that the agricultural sector in general in our country is 33% of the GDP. The livestock yield in that is very low. The share of livestock in the agricultural budget is quite low. When you look at the strategy, there is a question of data and decision-making based on data. And I've been trying to cut the data into various pieces, but sometimes you give up because the last data, especially in the KODI, the Kenya Open Data Initiative, it goes back to 2016, and we have not integrated the information properly speaking, unless of course it is in the ministries and set there. Then the last thing is regarding the value chains. You can notice that the strategy is beautiful in the way the ideas have been articulated, which is part of our Big Four agenda, especially in the agriculture and value addition, and that links to manufacturing. Still very low. Moreover, a sad part of it is that probably we are one of the highest cost production centers in the world of livestock. I noticed that one little data there in the strategy is, Honorable Secretary, that Africa in total, 55 countries, we are ranked 13th in the world in terms of number of livestock. I would say the productivity per cow or per goat or per sheep or dairy animal, it's a disaster, basically, from the point of view of a continent and a nation that is so endowed with beautiful gifts, such as rainfall, land, a culture that respects animals, and so on. Today, I want to invite you, Honorable Matiang'i, to tell us where have you played in? What is the role of productivity, the KMC, the abattoirs in the country? How do we distribute them? I'd like to ask you to prompt us, then I will say thank you, and I will allow you to leave if you're very busy, but how glad we would be to have you here. Honorable Matiang'i, thank you. Now I invite you to give your commentary.
Thank you very much, Dr. Njenga, and colleagues from Strathmore University and private sector colleagues, those who have joined this discussion. I am joined here by my colleagues, PS Kimutai, who's the PS in charge of livestock at the Ministry of Agriculture, and Olina from the President's Delivery Unit. But maybe before I go directly to responding to your question, let me first start by thanking you very sincerely, Dr. Njenga, and Strathmore University, for agreeing to partner with us through our President's Delivery Unit to begin this series of engagement on what we see about the Big Four and how the Big Four can contribute to the development of the country. The basis of this, if I may go back a little bit, was the discussions that we've had several times before. It's true, you and I have met before on a number of occasions. And after Executive Order number 1 of 2019, when His Excellency the President asked us to begin coordinating government development, the implementation of government development projects, we brought together, across all sectors of our country, several critical government projects, and began to have a very critical look at how government projects are implemented, how we're implementing public policy, how we develop it and implement it, and the results of that public policy. So let me begin from a point of absolute sincerity as a public servant, because I think I need to level with Kenya. It's a fact, and then we cannot hide from this reality that yes, we've done well on a number of things. Yes, we are on the path and we are on a journey to a number of successful things. But I think slowly but surely, we now need to develop a culture where there is close relationship between science, policy development, or sometimes actually, Georges, you and I have sometimes pontificated when we are discussing things over our drinks, that we need to look very closely at the gap between policy and politics. We have so many nice things that we've worked on before, so many nice things that we have discussed and so on and stuff like that. But we are too process enslaved to think about the results of what we are thinking and what we are doing, and to even measure, whether or not there has been an impact of some of the decisions that we have taken. I remember the origin of this particular discussion we're having today started when you asked me the question, why did we hand over the Kenya Meat Commission to the Ministry of Defense? And we had a long chat that evening. I said, look, I agree with you that there needs to be definite coherence between policy formulation, finally development, and finally measure the results of that. And I explained, as I'm going to explain to you, the rationale and the President's thinking. And then we can already see the results of that change of handing over Kenya Meat Commission to the Ministry of Defense. But let me say very sincerely that this discussion, and I hope that as we will all come together, share information sincerely and learn from one another. Because George and colleagues in this meeting, even government needs to admit sincerely that we don't have all the solutions to the problems that we have to deal with. We don't have all the knowledge. We don't have all the answers to the questions of the day. Where those who are in policy leadership, whether they're in government or the head government agencies like ourselves, find us who are looking at what we're doing from outside, and take very honest feedback and take honest guidance, honest criticism from colleagues, and then build on that as a way of, in any case, the objective we all have is making this a better place to live in and making this a stronger and better economy, as it were. We're having a challenge of huge numbers of our young people who are unemployed. That is the nightmare of any government right now around the continent. And no one has got all the answers. We don't certainly have all the answers. And honest conversations such as the one we are having between the President Delivery Unit and the Strathmore are very, very important. And I'm really grateful that Dr. Njenga, this has come to pass. And I hope that we can build on this relationship. I'm even willing to invite many more of my colleagues from cabinet and PSS to come on board so that we can now begin a conversation. In any case, what is democratic government? It is essentially collaborative government or deliberative government, where we do things, but we continue to have a conversation with those that we lead and those out there, many of them probably more knowledgeable and many of them who access more information than we do, so that then they guide us and they contribute so that we work on this journey together. We may not get it right all the time. We get it right sometimes, but when we don't get it right, we are sure to get it right next time, especially if we engage in conversations with institutions of high repute, such as the Strathmore University and the Strathmore Business School. So let's go to today's discussion, and then George, with your very kind indulgence, I will do a bit of this, respond to one or two issues, and then I'll excuse myself because I am happy that my colleague Kim Tai is here, PS Kim Tai, to carry on with this on this topic, because I have a function in Kiambu. I've got to go to Kiambu town today to launch and to begin the first phase of the card rollout. Anyway, the livestock sector, the truth of the matter is this, as you say, okay, agriculture contributes 33% to our GDP, but livestock contributes 12% to our GDP. It's a very important sector to us, and actually, it contributes about 50% of our agricultural workforce, all contributing towards the achievement of the Big Four agenda, pillar the attainment of food and nutrition security, as it were. Now, currently, as we go along, we notice that ultimately we will need to have a very comprehensive national livestock master plan, so that we have a coherent policy framework based upon which we need to go. And then I'm saying this, George, I need to emphasize that as government, we are committed to following up, and ensuring that livestock sector legislation is properly enacted and even reviewed, that we ring-fence resources, budget resources to support the livestock sector, as it were. You realize that the very basic strategy that, George, you keep reminding me every time, put your money where your mouth is. As government, you cannot tell us you're going to improve agriculture, but when you look at the budget, it tells us a different story. And one famous political scientist said, for any government, show me your budget and I will show you where your priorities lie as a government. We articulate our priorities, and say we want to improve agriculture and so on. But of course we have resource constraints, as it were. But as we go along and as we come to terms with some of the decisions we have made for ourselves, including tough governance decisions which have taken most of our resources, we will slowly but surely begin putting more and more energy and focus on the sectors that essentially build our economy, foremost of which is the agriculture sector. So, and because of this, and my colleague is going to talk more about a livestock breeding program that we developed in the country, and the government's commitment to ensure that farmer education and partnerships to boost the technologies that improve productivity and so on are put in place. Our feedlots development program that has been developed, and PS can talk about this as we try to now grow and strengthen the sector that have worked on this. Something that we can talk about until the cows come home, about our cooperative dairy farms and the dairy industry, which contributes about 4% of the country's GDP, and the efforts that we are making to ensure that this sector, whose production is estimated to be about 5.2 billion, is improved and strengthened, is addressed. And in these areas, they are very controversial issues that we need to address. One day, I hope in the course of this discussion, George, we will also have a discussion on the impact of some of the regional trade and business agreements that we have had on our economy and the development of our sectors, as it were. When milk is dumped from Uganda, for example, or milk powder is dumped here from Uganda, and then, I don't want to say much. I'm aware that I'm a public servant, I'm in the public. And that causes an effect on the price of milk and affects our farmers and so on. How do we do that and still continue to live in a peaceful East African community and honor the customs union that we have developed here? That there are very intricate and controversial issues around this that need to be addressed as we go along. And I hope that in my lifetime, we'll get to a point where we have honest regional trade relations and the honest and honorable regional trade agreements. Some of our trade agreements and engagements are very nice on paper, but you see sometimes there's every effort occasionally to subvert them, the detriment of our own farming community, as it were. And then, the government's effort to do value addition and establish common manufacturing facilities. The truth of the matter is that in many parts of our country, especially what you may call broadly as livestock areas of our country, we put out the map of our country and looked at some of our livestock areas in the country, where we are also developing very heavy infrastructural projects, like in the north of our country. These are the areas we could also describe as the livestock parts of the country, and to ensure that we can coalesce resources and provide manufacturing capacity in that part of the country, for example. I hope and look forward, and this is the government's intention, that one day as we go forward, for example, we develop strong and huge facilities in Isiolo. And that is why the government invested heavily in developing, for example, an airport in Isiolo, to ensure that we have capacity as we develop that area and grow manufacturing. We can move it further and further away from Nairobi and go to areas where it's likely to be more beneficial. So this and the development of disease-free zoning facilities in Kenya. George and colleagues, we are just about to complete the Bachuma Livestock Export Zone quarantine station in the coast. The project has been there for a while. This is one of the projects that, frankly, I'm very proud of, and I want to thank PS Timtai and his colleagues at the Ministry of Livestock for what the State Department of Livestock for what they've been able to do. The project faced challenges at some point, and it's going to contribute directly. And just last week, we, as government, started the process of exploring a PPP framework to get a private investor who will manage that disease-free zoning facility, which is going to make a big difference in livestock trade for us in this particular region. It's something that we have been missing for a very long time, as it were. And if that goes successfully, as I believe it will again trigger another opportunity to do a similar one again in Kilifi or in Lamu, and this again will provide an even enhanced and increased opportunity for livestock export, as it were. So to ensure that as we go along, and then my colleague Kimtal will talk more about it, that we will issue guidance on taming livestock diseases, and ensuring that the quarantine stations such as Bachuma are replicated across the country. As I said, George, we interestingly enough, and this is what actually, to be very honest with you as a public servant, it's something that I must confess sometimes I feel guilty about. If you go to the coastal part of our country, we have over 36,000 acres that were set aside for the Kenya Meat Commission, and part of it was set aside to do these kinds of things, to develop disease-free zones and so on, to facilitate livestock farming, export, and so on. We've never developed this since independence, and they have just been lying out there. Sometimes they have gotten into very basic and beneficial leasing arrangements with individuals and stuff like that, or mismanaged them, or grabbed them, or whatever the case may be. And the government is now determined to ensure with the opening up of the Bachuma zone, we want to move into maybe doing 2 more others within the coast region of our country, and this will transform livestock farming. And then finally, of course, something that my colleagues, especially Adan Mohammed, when he served as Minister for Industrialization, and later on my colleague Munya and Betty Maina have been working on, promoting hide, skin, and leather value chains across the country. It's an area where, honestly, I think our potential has not been tapped. The government is making investments in this area again to consolidate and increase investment in this, so that at the end of it, we have a wholesome development of the livestock sector as it were. What affects me on a day-to-day basis, and even as I speak to you right now that I'm dealing with, is a question of livestock farming. I mean, the cat rustling, which is a big security problem. I mean, one headache for every minister of Nigeria in this country is cat rustling. Right now, I have an operation going on in the boundary between Isiolo, Meru, and because of challenges we have been facing the last 10 days in relation to livestock farming. And that's why the government, we are working on deploying technology so that we develop a livestock identification and traceability program, so that we now use technology to ensure that we can help people keep their animals, and we can help those that move, whether they are moved from West Pokot to Elgeyo Marakwet or it's easy to trace this because livestock rustling has been a big problem in the country. Then finally, I know the challenge that everyone understands how we have invested heavily in the Kenya Livestock Insurance Program, and the resources that the government has put into this to develop the livestock insurance and help cushion farmers sometimes during harsh challenges like during the drought systems and so on. And then the intention here being to address the plight of the farmers, yes, but to also bolster cooperation with county governments, so that then county governments, I hope, as we go along, as part of the devolved function, many of them can take up this strength and this. And lastly, of course, George, the elephant in the room right now is the issue of the Kenya Meat Commission. And I will discuss this with, as usual, a measure of openness. Everybody was asking the question, I mean, why did we transfer Kenya Meat Commission to the Ministry of Defense? The truth is this: we have lost all opportunities of developing the Kenya Meat Commission within the framework that we had under the SCAC arrangement. Running it as a parastatal, we appoint boards, and the boards just lose money. If you meet people, even my colleague Munya will tell you, for example, from the agriculture sector, that in some of the agricultural sector reforms that we have carried out, so many years, colleagues, we have sunk money. I mean, we have just put money in a hole. You give money to Kenya Meat Commission in billions, and 2-3 years later, you can see nothing for it. I mean, money is wasted and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is this: because of incompetence, poor management, corruption, the parastatal could not move. And partly, this is where, again, I think as Kenyans, we really need to learn to be honest with one another. Yes, all these nice things we talk about, participation, democracy, and having boards and conducting interviews and having them, is a good thing. But the public sector, and in our country particularly, is too process-oriented. In the public sector, George, people worry more about the process is right and not the result. Sometimes nobody talks about the result. People worry about the process. You need 7 signatures to move a document that could be moved with 1 signature by just basic trust and so on. That kind of idiocy is the one that actually has messed up Kenya Meat Commission to the point that the president decided, let's give this to the Minister of Defense. First of all, the Minister of Defense is the foremost consumer. It's a captive client and a captive market for Kenya Meat Commission to start with. They were frustrated because they could not be supplied by the Kenya Meat Commission. It is not true, as some people allege that KDF is the one that was not paying the bills at Kenya Meat Commission. It's just not true. Kenya Meat Commission could not simply meet even 25% of the demand of the KDF all along. And let's be plain about it. It's because of mismanagement and incompetence in running the institution. Because you see, I keep saying this. the delivery of livestock to KMC since the military took over in a very short time has grown by 28%. The military has paid the farmers all the 256 million shillings owed to them. Because of one simple thing, the military is trained for results. The KDF military organizations train people for results. They always are focused on results. What are the results? I need to slaughter the animals, get the meat, and sell it, and get the money. The military doesn't spend time on benchmark tours, benchmark visits. You get these boats, and they want to go for benchmark tours and stuff like that. I don't know what you need to benchmark on slaughtering an animal and so on. So and people keep going around the globe, wasting public resources in that kind of manner. The military will not spend money in those kinds of silly things and waste everybody's time because they are result oriented. And the result of moving Kenya Meat Commission to the Ministry of Defense is essentially the president answering the question: what do Kenyan livestock farmers want? They want a good process that respects all governance tenets. People have conducted an interview, and there's a representative from that board from LSK, there's a representative from the Livestock Association. Is that what matters to the livestock farmers, or what matters to the livestock farmers is that when they deliver their animals, they get paid? And then in this case, the question is answered because now is the time to focus on results. And then I think, as our country, and as I come to the end of my remarks, as a country, George, not just in the livestock sector, but in many sectors, it is time we ask and answer that question. What do we actually want? We want results. We have stayed with this romance of processes, but not in all of them. I mean, look how much it revived the Kisumu port, working with the Kenyan Navy. Look how much time it has taken to revive the rail line between Nairobi and Nanyuki, working with KDF. And because this is an entity that is result-oriented. In fact, it is a process through which, in my view, I would suggest that we start to quote-unquote privatize public service. So the public service is run the way the private sector is run, because the private sector looks at the bottom line. Okay, in some cases, people argue government is not supposed to make money, but government is also not supposed to make losses. Because when we make losses, we impoverish our people. And how right is it that, you tell me and stay with them as ornaments and pour money into them every day, and they don't make a profit. And the next two elections, you will see the drama. Every region coming up and saying, then the government gives a pay. The money is paid to some fictitious suppliers. So the question is, result or process? And in this case, it's a focus on the result that we decide. Where I think we need to take lessons, and this is going to be my last comment on this, where we need to take lessons, and the Kenya Meat Commission is the classic example, is think through our policy framework, think through our value chains, and think through the institutional ecosystem we create for the implementation of the policies that we are looking at. That's why I was very excited when your colleague spoke about we have common interests as a people in the growth and development of livestock. That is fine. And the strategies that develop must be implemented. And they must be implemented in an institutional ecosystem that delivers results. And not an institutional ecosystem that looks beautiful and that satisfies feel-good factor. We feel good that we have gone through a public participation process, we have elected good people, we have put them in this place, and they are representative of various organizations, and then it's just gridlock. They cannot achieve anything. And in the process, all those fine good people do is just take up public resources, and I've given you the classic example. The beginning on benchmark tours and stuff like that, and waste budget resources. Back at home, much as they've done the benchmarking, they haven't slaughtered 1,000 animals, or they haven't paid livestock farmers for 6 years. So what would those farmers want? You know, money and the development of the sector, or a beautiful prospect? I think we have lessons learned. We're not there yet. I'm the first one to say that we're not there yet. This is the journey. And the journey that started in the late 80s of the public sector reforms is going on. And then we are acquiring experience and accumulating knowledge on how this will be done better and what we will learn. I would like a case study to be done of Kenya Meat Commission 24 months from now, after the Ministry of Defense has run, and we look at what they have been able to achieve, and we answer the question, why did they achieve it, and then try to see whether we can look at our legislative ecosystem and amend it to suit a result-oriented delivery and provision of service to our people. I'll be very happy last year as we go forward. And George, I want to assure you and our colleagues on this that I'll ask our team at the President Delivery Unit to immediately from now institutionalize a follow-up mechanism on the issues that come from this forum. I would not like this to be in vain, where we just discuss things and go away. I'm happy about the announcement about publications and discussions that are going to happen. But I'll be much happier if the proposals that we get from here and the issues that come out of here are not just documented, but they are also brought to the decision-making community in government. The meeting of the PSS, the meeting of the CSS, so that the decision-making community in government is also informed. We must have the humility to know that we don't have the information, and those who have done better than us have done so partly because they have listened to each other and they have learned from those who know more. And then we are ready to learn from those who know more, most of whom, especially in the livestock sector, are in this forum. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I assure you that we will do our best to be worthwhile partners to your wonderful institution as we continue the conversations and make this a better place than we found it when we came. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Matiang'i. I cannot give a clap for everybody here, but I want to say thank you very much. It is very clear that you have hit the nail on the head, this last conclusive statement, that it is time that we respect the process of thinking through scientifically and connecting to results. These two things, scientific process and results, is very core. And for that matter, I want also to support the decision. And I want to tell you that we have already set it up for you, now putting in the bolts, a scientific center with a website where we will put all this information, and we will specifically have a website on agriculture. We will try to continually update it. We will have an administrative board that will be triple helix stationed, the government, the private sector players, some, we won't put everybody, and the academia. And our job is to occasionally look at those results, look at the process and why that process is good or bad, and finally give ideas to you and the government in general so that we may make right decisions. Thank you very much for pointing out the question of effective implementation vis-a-vis following processes that don't give results. This is crucial. And I know how difficult it is. I'm aware a little bit. And I don't know how we are going to enable our government executives to feel free to unite themselves together with the coordination team, because this is also a security issue. Food is a security issue. and they unite around you to see how to fast track the Bajuma zone, which is incredible. That is amazing. If we can put that into practice. So I want to tell you that we are already putting the bolts together for the public policy and in specific agricultural sector advisory team of the government, the academia and research, and the private sector, so that we can give ideas to you that are well-founded in good discussions and good data. Now, before I invite PS Harry Kimtai, may I ask whether there are one or two questions that could be directed to Honorable Matiang'i? Martin and Laban, do we know how we have planned that question and answer session?
Yes. So Laban will field maybe one or two questions. Laban, anything for the Cabinet Secretary?
Thank you very much, Martin. We honestly appreciate and thank the CS, and seeing him here, of course, is a commitment on its time, and a commitment, of course, in ensuring that we achieve the Big Four. Largely, I think we got questions, particularly great interest, especially looking at the Kenya Meat Commission. I'm glad that he's actually given his commitment, and even that charge about the 24 months, largely to see what are the milestones that we'll actually achieve by having KMC at the Ministry of Defense. I stand guided on the CS's time as well, and maybe get communication from his office if we can just sample through the questions that we've gotten. So I'm going to just quickly get guidance from the team. But we also thank those of us who've sent in their questions through our chat platform and of course online as well. I'm told we have a chance for one question. So I'm going to open it up as well really quickly. This is your moment. I think you can use the chat option to maybe raise your hand or even just share, and we will pose the question to the CS as well.
Okay. And Laban Cliff, I noticed we have 3 questions in the question and answer section. So we could pick from one of those 3 for the CS. So under Q&A. Oh, you're muted, Laban?
Sorry, Martin. Yes, please, Martin. I think one of the 3. We can just pose one of the 3 in the interest of time, and then the CS will respond as well.
Okay. So I see there's a question on feeds. There's a question on pig farmers and the private sector. Because it's ecosystem, why don't I go with the question on private sector? What opportunities exist for private sector actors engaged in the meat processing industry that will support the development of livestock hubs? And I think this is quite a powerful question. It speaks to value chains. It speaks to investment. So perhaps the CS, Dr. Njenga, could assist with that question.
Okay. So I'll rephrase it. Okay. Dear Cabinet Secretary Matiang'i, we don't have a system where we can produce feedstock at reasonable costs. We don't have a connected supply chain system that will enable feedlots to be aggregated and then sent to the farmers. And probably those feedlots and aggregation centers are supported by the government from a tax perspective, from a capital cost perspective, from a transportation perspective. How do we get feedstock to animal farmers? And we are talking about the whole range, not just meat. Meat is a very crucial thing, but we also have dairy productivity and fish, and we have cows and goats and sheep. How do we get the feedlot cost to be reduced? Some people say sugar beet, but what is your thought regarding that process? What comes first?
Well, you know, by the way, George, it's first of all, thank you for the question. And this is when you suffer the vagaries of what we do. I mean, looking at the questions, I wish I could just sit through the whole morning on this. The interest in what we are doing and so on, and yet run up something. You know, the opportunities we have for private sector investment in this area, honestly speaking, is just limitless. What I think we need to do, to be very honest, it's us who need to look at, like as I said, the proposal to work on a livestock master plan, to look at what kind of incentives that we can provide for private investors, for example, to develop private as a situation. The investment in this area has not been as much as it ought to be. In fact, it's much less than the potential that we have. Partly, I must say, because you know, to an extent, probably we have not incentivized private investment in this area strong enough. But I want to assure participants in this meeting that because now we are paying very strong attention to this, and because we want to invest heavily in this particular area, the situation will change and change dramatically. And George, I've been told by my colleagues that Bachuma will be complete probably by Christmas this year. And the president is so determined and is hell-bent on ensuring that we immediately begin another one once we complete a PPP process for the management of Bachuma. And as I said last week, we approved that process to start. So my view is that we have huge opportunities for doing this. And then the private sector investment can come to this. You know, I remember 2 years ago, when our president had a discussion with the government of Djibouti and the interest they had in joining us in joint ventures targeted at supporting the growth and development of the livestock sector in the country, which shows that we have huge potential. We just basically have to incentivize private investment. Look at you know, how we can support those who come in as private through various institutions and organizations. We can even engage in supporting private sector investors to lease government land that may be available to do this, because sometimes you know, costs like of land and so on are discouraging to private investors. But we are really looking at schemes like even Galana itself. We are reviewing it again. Galana Kulalu, with a view to providing opportunities for to come in and invest, and then like a supportive environment, supportive infrastructure environment, provision of power, and so on. Are all investments targeted at supporting private sector investment in this particular area, as it were? I think our attitude has changed. We have had a wake-up call after the experiences we have had, including what we are going through right now in the country, the COVID-19 experience, and the changes that have just done at the Kenya Meat Committee. We have more focusing now on so the opportunities are limited. We now need on this front. That is why George, very direct private sector engagement with government. We have moved away from a time when we looked at you know, private sector as an irritant, and now private sector is our foremost partner in the growth of our economy. And through KEPSA and other private sector avenues, we're having discussions to support investors who may come in and are interested in putting resources in this sector, but need some hurdles to be removed. We need to work on incentive packages. And my colleague Kim Tai will shortly speak about how the State Department of is looking at the future of the sector and the schemes that we want to put in place to fill this are essentially limitless. We are going to be much more efficient than we have been in the past. And as I said, we are going to be much more result-oriented than we have been in the past. And private sector investors who have resources to put in this particular sector are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. Now, I said only one question, and I know you have to leave very quick. But there is a question here that you should take with you if you're not going to answer, and that is, when you bring in the public-private sector relationship, there are certain issues that must come into play. For instance, you have talked about feeding the army. And then the second thing is, how do you improve, which is what most people are asking now, how do you improve the environment for private sector investment in this area? And a core question arises here. If you allow the private sector to come in, then what they will do is export the cows and the meat to Dubai, to Saudi Arabia. I know very many people who are doing that because the need is there. Yet when you look at the meat supply to the Kenyan population, you somehow feel that locally we are not meeting our supply needs. The demand is higher than the supply. So where does the balance hold? This is a very important thing, because I think if we don't have that correlation between government, private sector, and science, if you will, there'll be a problem.
George, you know, we this year we have commenced a very aggressive program of supporting private sector investment in the country, even through government consumption or public sector consumption itself. You know, we actually now started actualizing our Buy Kenya, Build Kenya campaign, where we're insisting that public institutions in the country, we put out a list that the Treasury, put out, circulated the other day, or products that we must first of all buy and exhaust locally before we can buy elsewhere. Government is the biggest consumer in this case, and government institutions are the biggest consumer. We have enough market and a very strong market to support private sector. Even if you were talk about supplying KDM, Kenya Prisons, the police, Kenya Youth Service, and so on and so forth. You know, we ourselves through that program are prepared to support private sector investment. They will find a ready market in government. That coupled with the insistence that now we have to pay bills. You know, we have been in the past notorious for not paying our suppliers on time. But you know, in the last 1 year alone, we have cleared the bulk of our pending bills, which means government is being a good business partner, and therefore providing an environment for private sector growth, as it were. And then as we keep improving, the sector, exporting out of the country, that's okay. But you see, what we would rather prefer is support the value chains so that we manufacture and we export a finished product, out of the country. We'll be very happy to supply, the other armies, out of this country. So it's providing a framework, and this is the package of incentives we have been discussing with KEPSA on the cost of power, for example, to support manufacturing, looking at the tariffs and the tax regime, and how it can support the local manufacturers in the country. Sometimes we have looked at very basic things, and even this week in government we have been looking at our tax regime. Is it facilitative to local investment, or it actually makes local investment fly out of here? And it's a package of things that the government needs to do. And I can assure you, we are completely alive to this challenge. And we hope that, as we go forward, the improvement that we are making will be felt and will be visible, and people will experience it, as it were, that will be an attractive, investment destination for those who want to put there. So I want to assure this forum that we are ready to continue engaging in conversations with the private sector consistently on how to address some of these challenges. We want to do everything we can to ensure that we grow manufacturing in our country, and that's how I think private sector will be encouraged to continue investing.
Thank you very much, Honorable Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, Cabinet Secretary of Interior and Coordination of Security in the country. We have heard you. We have seen the ideas and the passion you have for the country. Let us continue the dialogue. There are so many things within the agricultural sector, within the security sector, within the trade sector. We would love to continue more conversations with your colleagues. And I want to say deeply heartfelt, thank you for respecting the academia. Thank you for respecting the private sector for a dialogue. And that is what I want to pray that we continue. And thank you for pushing it for us. And now we will allow you to leave with gracious gratitude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George, and all the best.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you to our Cabinet Secretary for his time as well. And also the team. As they leave, it's not saying that we are left without a right hand. And I must say somebody who's very capable and has been mentioned largely in the CS's speech is none other than Mr. Harry Kimtai, who's the Principal Secretary, State Department for Livestock, Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, and as well must add cooperatives as well. So cooperatives also added under his docket. So Bwana Kimtai, we apologize. I know there's a lot. I must say, and I'm also told as well that we have a lot of questions that perhaps would have posed to the CS as well, but he's given you the charge and you're well able, and you, as I mentioned, you have a great team behind you, so feel free to again drop it to them should you wish to do so. So we're going to give you this chance for some sort of a deep dive. Okay, so get a presentation from you for the next few minutes, after which my colleague Martin Bai is going to come up to hear from the experts as well and get to hear from that response. And what I'm happy about is Dr. Njenga mentioning the bit about the private sector and the largely speaking about that engagement and seeing how we can have them on board, and they're all represented here, so it's quite great. I should mention that we are still live online as well. I see the hands, I see the question. I think Sarah Walusimbi, I see the questions as well through the chat platform. So keep them coming. We will have that open discussion after the PSS presents and also Martin engages him, and after which we'll have our Q&A. So over to you, Bwana PS, to take it away.
Thank you, Laban. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this very important topic today, specifically that touches on the livestock industry and provides guidance on how we are going to shape the sector through the value chains post-COVID pandemic. I think I want to take it up from where our CS has just said that we want to look at the livestock subsector, and you mentioned very clearly that the contribution of the livestock to the GDP of the country has not been very good. But I think this is because, and I like what Njenga said also, is the issue of data. We could be either undervaluing on the contribution of livestock subsector, or we just suppressing it because we don't have enough data. But I think so far the data that we have based on the 2016 KNBS, 2012 KNBS report is that we contribute to about 12% to our gross domestic product. And to the agricultural GDP, it contributes to 50%. So that has been said very well by our CS. And I'm happy to note that now with academia, we are able to collect more data to support some of these facts that are stated here. But I want to go deep a little bit. Cliff, I hope you are getting me, yeah?
Loud and clear, Bwana PS.
Thank you.
Loud and clear.
I want to do the deep dive now, specifically yes, on the interventions under the Big Four.
Sure.
And the most important intervention that we've identified is actually the livestock sector regulatory framework. We have we look at when the president gave the directives on the Big Four agenda, and specifically our contribution in the food and nutritional security. We looked at the framework that we have, the policies that we have, and we realized that the framework and the policies that we have are not up to date. Some dates back to, like, for example, the National Livestock Policy, which dates back to sessional paper number 2 of 2008, was not up to date in terms of the current constitution. So what we've done is we looked at the new policies now that we have developed, the National Livestock Policy that has been published as a sessional paper number 3 of 2020. We also looked at our veterinary policy that has been published as a sessional paper number 2 of 2020. And these two policies are now ready to guide the sector. Why do we say this? Because we want to ensure that the sector is able to respond to the livestock domestic production for local market and also for international market, which now all the sector players will be able to see opportunities that are available. The key thing that, and I think most of the players of the livestock sector are here, and they will note that in the livestock sector, we did not have, we had the fragmented laws that were all there. But what we did and what we have done basically is we have developed what's called the livestock bill that we submitted to the Attorney General, and it's awaiting for publication. Now, what is in this bill? I want to say that number one, we have the various government institutions that were not properly anchored into the law. We are looking at the Kenya Animal Genetic Resource Agency, the Kenya Sese and Trichomoniasis Eradication Council, the Kenya Veterinary Vaccines Production Institute, our training institutions that support the livestock subsector. And also we said that we've got to go further and develop areas that institutions that have not been catered for within the sector. We looked at number one, the Livestock Inputs and Products Regulatory Agency as an authority that is going to support the livestock subsector in terms of inputs. I've seen people asking many questions of the cost of feeds, and all this is because it is not properly regulated. Now, in our livestock bill, we have said we need a livestock inputs and products regulatory authority to be able to sustain and regulate the sector. We also wanted to develop the livestock products and marketing board. And you can see this one is coming out all over. People say livestock has been put in the back burner, but we are saying because of lack of regulatory framework, lack of legal framework to support the sector. So we came up with a livestock products marketing board that will be able now to look at supporting the livestock farmers in the marketing of their products, both locally and domestically. And this is not, it's not only, I mean, it's something that was written down in other countries and other jurisdictions very well, and it's able to sustain the sector very well. The other aspect is the issue of research. If you look at our research, the livestock research is been put and combined with the crops research. And you find that sometimes the contribution of or the need for livestock research is put at the back burner, and therefore we do not gain much from the livestock research. This now, with the formation of the livestock research organization that will deal specifically with the livestock and specifically in our breeding farms, in our breeding programs, we need to look at this as an independent research institution that will be able to attract funding independently. And then finally, on the livestock bill, we have what's called the National Livestock Regulatory Board. Now, this is what is going to regulate all other activities that within the sector. I want to say that this will provide regulation and unregulated value chains within the food safety and hygiene, a fair trade, control of disease and pest, and in addition, it will assure development of the competent human resource skills within the sector. Now, that is the purpose of us developing the livestock bill. I want to state that we have also looked at other bills, specifically that deals with the veterinary, that's guided by the veterinary policy. And these ones are the Animal Health Bill, Animal Welfare and Protection Bill, and Veterinary Public Health Bill. Now, you find that we because of the challenges that we have in the sector, there's a lot of alteration of the products, milk, for example, meat. We've all had that in the media, and therefore, with this policy and these bills that we are developing, we are going to have the sector that is well regulated. Other regulations that we have developed, which is also facing a lot of resistance, and because if once we do it, then the sector is going to be regulated very well, is the dairy industry regulations. Now, these regulations that we have currently are dated back in 1958 or thereabout, because that's when the Kenya Dairy Board the Dairy Board Act was formulated. Now we've got to amend these regulations to align with the current situation and the current trade that we have. For example, the ATM machines that we have, these were not regulated, and therefore there is need for us to come up with the new regulations that will also guide the trade in milk, where we have the milk ATMs. Now, very important aspect of it, and the issue of regulation that we are now talking about, just support that our CSR said on the issue of animal identification and traceability. We did not have the proper regulations that will support the new innovations, the new technology that we have in the sector, and therefore we had to develop the regulations for identification, and also this helped us in making sure that we come up with a strategy to regulate this new area. Now, in 2019, I want to say that we launched through the Ministry.
Bwana PS, I think your connection has hung. You're back now.
I'm back now?
You're back now,
sorry,
yes.
Sorry, I think there is a challenge. So I was talking about the national export strategy for livestock that has been developed, which is going to guide the sector. And this strategy basically is calling upon all the sector players to come together and form one council, which is called the Livestock Livestock Development Council, that will look at the entire livestock production and see how they are going to articulate issues relating to both local and export market. If you look at other sectors, manufacturing, for example, we have the CAM, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. We have the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. But in our sector, we do not have such kind of strong alliances, strong associations that are able to act as a backup to the sector and to attract investment in that sector. Now, our CS has talked so much about the National Livestock Master Plan that is being developed. I want to say that this is something that we identified it as a need, and already we formed a task force team, the National Steering Committee, that has been appointed to look at now the entire master plan for livestock. And we are happy that we've gotten support from development partners. FAO, for example, are giving us experts. ILRI, that's International Livestock Research Organization, is also giving us support in terms of the technical expertise. So once we develop this livestock master plan, then we shall have an opportunity to showcase it to the private sector, to look at the opportunities that are available across the country and start investing in the livestock sector. The other aspect is on the issue of the breeding programs that we need to develop. All countries that have had improvement in the livestock sector have invested so much on the livestock breeding programs. Now, this is where we maintain our genetics. This is where we improve our genetics for the purpose of productivity. And the government has not been, has also been the forefront to ensure that we continue with this investment. For those who know, we had only one breeding center, that is in Kabete. But now we have an additional breeding center in Kitale. It's in ADC Kitale, that's Agricultural Development Corporation farm in Kitale, which will be able to support our livestock sector by producing 1.2 million straws of semen, and this being high quality semen that will increase or support productivity within the area. And this is also going to help us to export not only to to the region, but all over, because now we are able to we are going to compete internationally by supporting making sure that we are able to supply the germplasm through our production institutes. If you look at some of our animals that again, some countries have started even domesticating it. So we have the red Maasai sheep, the Gala goats, the Saiwa cattle, the Orma cattle, and the indigenous chickens that we have. We have developed, we want to ensure that these endangered species are protected and we improve on them. And that's why we are working on the breeding programs to support what is produced locally to ensure that it's able to sustain itself and increase productivity. We have various farms across the country that will be able to support all this. Some of these farms we have them is in Naivasha. We have the Rabbit and National Rabbit Center at Ngong Farm. We have the bee colonies at a station in Lenana that supports both the youth and women, because they are able to supply their products there and their process in what's called the common manufacturing facilities. I want to say that we've also supported the county government in establishing what's called the bull schemes. And we've encouraged the livestock farmers to form groups to establish this specific kind of program that will be able to enhance the productivity of their livestock. With the support of CalRO, I think this is something that is being supported by research. CalRO, the current CalRO is supporting the various groups, especially the indigenous chicken, for example. We've seen the productivity of our chicken now has gone up, and therefore this is what we are benefiting from. And this is the kind of research that I talked about that we need to enhance. We need to put more money in the livestock research. Now we are coming up with what's called the feedlot development program. We looked at the systems that were there before, where the government used to have what's called the holding grounds. And these holding grounds was basically the government farms that were stationed strategically within what's called the livestock routes. But if you look at the current system and the current pattern that we have in the country in terms of trade of livestock, the system has changed. And therefore, our holding grounds are lying idle and they are not being utilized. What you've said, and that you saw our CS said, we have now gone into the feedlot program. What we want is to have partnership with the private sector to take up those farms so that they are able to start intensifying the livestock production using the feedlot systems. So we have now sensitized the private sector, women and youth to take up such opportunities. One, they will be able to supply the fodder, the pasture, and even the veterinary services to these feedlot operators because they will be strategic and they'll be known where they are. This takes almost the same model like the cooperative system that we are talking about in the dairy sector. And therefore, I just want to talk about the cooperative systems that we have in the dairy sector. We all know that our cooperative system is one of the best within the region, and other countries have also come to, especially in Africa, they have come to benchmark on our dairy systems. So we want to enhance this by ensuring that we continue strengthening the cooperative movement. I know the government is supporting them with the hardware, what's called the hardware, that is the milk coolers, which is actually the infrastructure for milk, because we've had challenges in terms of the processors not collecting the milk on time. But we looked at this as a government and discovered this, there is a gap because the farmers are going at a loss, and therefore we told them to aggregate themselves to form what's called the cooperatives. Now, at the moment, what they are doing is they're aggregating for marketing, but they are not aggregating for the purpose of production to enjoy what's called economics of scale. So this is a new model that we want to support our dairy farmers to ensure that they come up with the dairy farms that will be able to be run sustainably based on economics of scale. So I believe this will help improve the quality, the quantity, and the profitability and the incomes of the producers. This is a concept that I want to say that we also borrowed from the Israeli system, which is under the kibbutz system. So we are looking at this and seeing that we want also our farmers to go that direction because it is really benefiting the farmers in terms of the economics of scale. Now, on the issue of value addition and establishment of the common manufacturing facilities, I think it has been said very clearly that some regions, some areas, some counties lack what's called the manufacturing facilities. For example, and the CS, I think, gave this an example, areas like Isiolo, Marsabit, Garissa, Wajir, we realize that the trade in camel meat is really, really very profitable. And as a result, because the country has not established a very robust system, there is a lot of trekking of animals all the way to Ethiopia or Somalia, and it's exported to the Middle East. Now, what we are doing is we noted that as a gap, and we came up with a common manufacturing facility that will be based in Moyale and Isiolo. This will support the livestock sector and support the groups within that area. We looked at what product is coming out of that, and for those who come from those areas, we have what's called the nyiri meat from the camel. It goes through a certain process, but when it comes to international standards, it doesn't meet international standards. What we did is that we had to support these groups, support these farmers to develop what's called the common manufacturing facilities that will be able now to produce the nyiri meat in a more hygienic and safe environment, and it meets what's called international standards. We have also developed standards for them so that they'll be able to trade without any hindrance. We have continued further to develop some of these common manufacturing facilities. We are identifying honey, for example, to be produced at our national beekeeping station at Lenana here, because most of our producers of honey are not able to process this honey further for packaging. Yet there is a ready market for it. The only thing is the investment cost that goes into it for especially youth and women. So to broaden it, what we have done, other than maybe attracting the private sector, we also want the women and youth to come on board, and therefore we are establishing these facilities to support them. Now, we have worked very closely. One of the challenges we have is the issue of the residues. And our honey is not able to reach the EU market, for example. What we have done is we have developed the honey residue monitoring plan that will be able to support the sector and have our laboratories certified and accredited for licensing and certifying honey products for export to the EU market. This has been done, and we're expecting that by December, our National Accreditation Service will be able to accredit these laboratories that we have at the Central Veterinary Laboratory Services within the Kabete. Now, on the issue of disease-free zones facilities in Kenya, I think our CS has elaborated so much on the Bachuma Livestock Export Zone. This is one of the models that we want to adopt. And it is not only here in Kenya. I think he mentioned about Djibouti. There's also in Botswana. And this is going to support the sector in terms of the live export of animals. Now, the challenges that we have been facing normally are the challenges of disease. Without screening, you will not be able to export or certify these animals for export. The Bachuma Livestock Export Zone will be able to play this key role. And I think this is there now where we are going to meet the private sector. As the CS has just said, the process, the approval plans for leasing it to the private developers has already been given approval by the cabinet. Now we are working very closely with the National Land Commission to ensure that we start the process of competitively recruiting a private partner to take over and manage and expand the facility through the lease arrangement. We are looking at the Land Act number 6 of 2012 to support that. We have been having challenges with the PPP model that the Treasury had given guidance, but we are very lucky and fortunate that they gave us approval to use the normal procurement and the disposal act to ensure that we use the Land Act for the purpose of leasing. Now, this process has already started. The Land Commission is seized of this matter, and they are preparing the documentation that will be able to support us in recruiting a private developer. Now, the role of the Director of Veterinary Services will just be one, to oversight and support the screening procedures and certifications of animals that identifies it, that's free from trade-related diseases. Once we do this, I so believe I will be able to model others in Tana River, as the CS has said, that is in Kurawa, and also in Lamu. We are already investing about 300 million shillings additional through the Kenya Climate Smart program to support these two counties of Lamu and Tana River. So we so believe that with the running of the Bachuma facility, then we are going to replicate in other areas so that the livestock farmers have an opportunity. Now, there is one other value chain that has really not been exploited here in Kenya, and that is the hides and skin, and that's within the leather value chains. Actually, the development of the leather industry has been inhibited by the poor quality of hides and skins. And to address this issue, we are looking at the State Department for Livestock is promoting what you call the breeding of livestock, and trying to ensure that working very closely with the counties, we come up with the suitable animal husbandry practices and capacity build the flayers or the slaughters, those who are in the slaughterhouses. If we harvest these hide and skins correctly, then we are going to achieve a lot in terms of supporting our manufacturing. And then to address this also, we've looked together with the Kenya Leather Development Council. We are developing what's called the Leather Industrial Park at Kenania in Machakos. What we are doing at that park, basically at the moment, is to ensure that we have what's called the affluent treatment plan that meets international standards, that meets NEMA standards, and attracts those who want to invest in leather tanning. This has been a hindrance because most of the time you've been hearing most of our tanners, when NEMA visit them because of environmental concerns, they are closed down. And when they are closed down, that means they are not able to take the hides and skins from our traders. So with the support of the National Treasury, we have invested in now what's called the Industrial Effluent Treatment Plan at Kenania. We so believe this will really act as a catalyst within that sector. But after the process, the skins have been turned into leather. Again, there is a big challenge because we've not been able to support the sector in producing the leather products. And what we have done is through we are now upgrading the training. We're actually equipping and upgrading the training of shoe industry in Thika. This will support the SMEs so that you have your designs and you give out the designs and it is processed in what's called the common manufacturing facility. The same has been done at Karioko here in Nairobi to support the SMEs. So we so believe that with investment in the leather sector, we're going to spur manufacturing in that sector. We've gone further to develop a hide and skins and leather strategy that is going to support and align all the production and all the value chain, value addition within that value chain. Now, the issue of livestock identification and traceability is one of the key areas that we are investing in jointly with the Ministry of Interior to ensure that we come up with a proper system that is able to identify the animals. And this will also help us in managing diseases. It will help us in ensuring that we get access to the market because when other countries come for what's called verification process to come and look at our systems of production, they look at it and say, you have a challenge of traceability. And therefore, if there is any disease that will be detected, we will not be able to know where is it coming from which region. You find that if a disease is detected, and then the entire export of is banned for the entire country, yet it could be just within a region. So the traceability system is going to help us ensure that we're able to trace back and know which farm or which area did this disease originate from. So I so believe the traceability system is going to do that. But further, this the livestock identification and traceability system is now going to support us in collateralization of the livestock. We've been having engagements with the financial institutions because they have not been supporting the livestock sector. One, because of if you look at the farms or those areas, their farms are not titled because it is pastoral, communal land. So what we are doing is to make sure that we support the pastoralists. We now have this system that will be able to be shared by the financial institutions, it will be shared by the insurance companies, and it will be shared by the veterinary service providers to make sure that we are able to control the movement of the animals and transfer of the animal. If you want to call it in a simple term, we want to call it, it is like the logbook of, just similar to the logbook of a car. This will be able to provide as a document, a certificate that will prove the ownership of this animal, and that the livestock farmer will be able to engage with the financial institutions and just be like any other person who has an asset. So we want to make sure that these animals now become an asset to the livestock farmers. I do not want to talk so much about the Kenya Meat Commission because our CS has really delved so much in it. We all know the challenges that the Kenya Meat Commission has had. From inception, 1950s, the machinery has also been obsolete. And I think the strategic decision to transfer KMC to the Ministry of Defense is basically to streamline its operations.
Not sure if it's my internet or Dr. Njenge, You also, can we be able to hear the PS? Can you?
No, I'm not. I'm not aware to hear.
Okay.
I'm not aware of what the problem is. I don't know.
Okay, great. As we're just waiting for his internet to load, Sheila, I don't know who under his docket you can throw to, especially he's got into that silent topic of the Kenya Meat Commission, which of course the CS largely spoke about. So Sheila, this is your docket. I'm sure you'd actually know particularly which officer can expound on that.
Yes, he's
even as we get the PS. Okay, he's back on.
Back. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Oh, thank you. We have a challenge with the internet here, so sorry for that.
Not to worry. We're trying to get to one of your officers to expound on the KMC, but please just start on that point. We kind of lost you, especially towards the end.
The issue of KMC, I think I want to say that His Excellency, what he did is that he came up with a task force that will be able to look at the operations of KMC and then looked at the challenges KMC is facing. And we all looked at it and said that I think there are challenges in terms of, as mentioned, governance, infrastructure, accumulated debts that KMC had all through. And the strategic decision was made to transfer KMC to the Ministry of Defense so that it will be able to streamline some of those operations. The reason is just to rejuvenate KMC strategically so that it plays a role that provides a market for the livestock and the pastoralist. Number one, we targeted because it was assumed that we'll give the KMC will supply now exclusively to our armed forces. So therefore, it is a guaranteed market. And then in the process, KMC with its modernization programs that we had initiated is now going to look at export market and therefore, so we started with the domestic market, which we looked at the defense forces, because KMC is not able to compete with the local abattoirs, and therefore we started with exclusive under Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, to allow KMC to supply to our armed forces and thereafter upgrade the production systems in KMC so that it is able to meet the international standards. So that was a strategic decision, and I think it is going to bear fruits. As the CS has said, we want to review this maybe, as he said, after 2 years and see whether it is helping the livestock farmers. Now, I want to talk about one of the most interesting and innovative program that we've developed as a country, and we are the first ones in Africa to implement, and that is the Kenya Livestock Insurance Program. Now, the Kenya Livestock Insurance Program uses what is called the National Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, NDVI, and looks at using the satellite, it looks at the forage situation, and if the forage situation is getting depleted, what happens is it triggers what's called a payout. Now, this is something that has been successfully piloted for the last 5 years, and has worked, and the whole of Horn of Africa, the Horn of Africa region is adopting it, and entire Africa is also adopting it. Now, this will make sure that we've brought in the private sector to come and support the livestock farmers during drought, during famine. So I think this is one program that we are very proud of, and we are going to expand it. And we want to give the private sector now an environment through regulations that we are going to develop under the livestock insurance program or policy that we are going to develop, that will be able now to provide an environment for the private sector to come on board. So this is one program that we are really proud of, and we hope that since it has been replicated in Africa, we should be able to expand in the entire country. So I think in conclusion, I want to say that there are very many opportunities for the investors in the livestock sector. And then it goes all the way from production, value addition, processing, supply within the supply chain, and at all levels, both locally and internationally. The thing is, as a government, we have provided what's called enabling environment through the new regulations, through the new policies that we have developed. So we so believe that with this new model that we have come up with, the triple helix model, then the information will be available. There's be close collaboration between the ministry and the private sector, And I want to say this, that we have already started the collaboration through what's called the Agriculture Sector Network group that we are working, which is a group of subsector of the capture. And we are really achieving a lot, because the challenges that the sector was facing in terms of the policies, in terms of regulations, are all being addressed under one roof, jointly together with the private sector. Now, that has been a big challenge, because the private sector was pulling in a different direction, the government was pulling in a different direction, and we were not working for the common good of the farmer or the common good of the pastoralist. We have now joined hands together, and I so believe that with this additional model of the triple helix model, then we are going to take it to the next level. I want to end there, and if there are any questions, I want to listen to them and then comment. Thank you, Laban.
Bwana PS, asante sana, asante kabisa. It's precious to hear all the beautiful details you are really achieving there in government. We've seen regulation, we have seen institutional development, we have seen a trade perspective, we have seen a technical perspective, we have seen a health perspective, animal health perspective, we have seen incentivization systems for the private sector and also for government, and also trying to bridge the gap in managing our border zones with our trade partners. Now, that was a question that came through from the CS quite strongly. May I ask you just to add one little thing, which bothers me, and that is culture and livestock. Connecting culture and education. I noticed that you are planning a very good education system of SMEs. I've noticed that that is there in your strategy and also in the Vision 2030 and in the Big Four. It's very clear. Can you talk to us about how do we transform our cultures around animals? Because quite a big or large amount of livestock is based in areas where culture is probably a problem from the perspective of productivity and from the perspective of process.
Thank you, Dr. Njenga. I think that's a very good question, and it also mirrors exactly what's happening in our country, because if you look at our livestock production systems, they are mainly in the arid and semi-arid areas. And number two, the communities that live in those areas are known to value livestock. And it's not only the value, it's within their culture. And therefore, what we are now doing is to partner with them. We've developed, like in Narok, for example, we have what's called the Pastoral Livestock Training Institute. Now, that is specifically to support training of the community to understand the production systems, to modernize within their culture. We also have similar in Isiolo. And then the one for Wajir was upgraded now to a fully fledged institute that will be able to undertake courses that support now the livestock sector in terms of range management, in terms of animal health. So we, as a State Department, we had already put that in place, and there were those where the communities were being trained within the cultural perspective, not going outside. So I think we have tried to address that. And another aspect is to support them in their breeds, breeding of the animals, because they have what's called the Boran, we have the red Maasai sheep. So we tell them how important that is to them and how can they preserve and continue increasing their productivity, not remain within the same, but increase the productivity of the animal. So we are doing that within the communities itself, and that's what the ministry, the department is doing. So if you look at our livestock bill, it has the support of the livestock institutions that will be able to go and try to model these courses to support what you call those communities in terms of their culture. So that is what we are doing, and we're also looking at it in terms of the competence-based training, which has been guided by the Ministry of Education. So we do not need somebody to have a qualification to be taken to some of these institutes. As long as they are within the production systems, they can only be supported in what's called the competence-based system. So that's what we are doing as a department.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now I will give the hand back to Laban and Martin Bayer so that we can see how to carry out this conversation. I think we have a time challenge here, and Bwana PS, I would like you to allow us, if you wish, a moment of discussion. If we will try to do it by 12:30 and finish.
Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Njenga, as well. Notice you're very attentive and taking lots of notes there as well, and the questions have been rightfully put. So Martin, it's over to you now to have the oldest task of trying to encapsulate everything and really bring in that voice that we actually need. We see the development partners, the private sector as well. So I'm going to throw it to you for a few minutes. I see Dr. Njenga has given us a target of half noon. So let's see as moderators if we can hit that and proceed.
Great, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, Honorable PS and Dean Dr. Njenga for those perspectives. What I'd like to do is bring in a set of actors who span the triple helix. And we've got 7 individuals. I'll mention each of them so that when I go to each of them, they can all contribute. And as I mentioned your name, our distinguished panel, I request you to turn on your video. And then as I speak to each of you, you can turn on the voice. I'll give each of our panelists 3 minutes just to very crisply reflect on everything they've had this morning. So we'll do a round for all 7, 3 minutes each. Then we're going to spend literally just a minute asking each of the panelists to give 1 challenge, 1 opportunity so that we can figure out a way forward. So for our panel, we have Dr. Maurice Cherogoni, who's the regional manager in Kitale. I had Kitale coming up at least once or twice in the conversations of the African Development Corporation. Karibu sana, Dr. Cherogoni. We also have David Miner, who's the technical advisor, Performita Agribusiness. So we have a perspective from private sector. We've got Dr. Christy Peacock, who's the chairperson at Sidai Africa Limited, also representing the private sector. We've got Dr. Fidelis Mujibi, who's the CEO at Usomi Limited, which was formerly based at ILRI. ILRI has come up a few times in the conversation today. We have Jane Gige. We're actually very privileged to have KEPSA represented in the context of the Agricultural Sector Board and the Agriculture Sector Network, ASNET. So Jane Ngige, karibu sana. We've got Mr. Elisha Boatuti, who's the director at Shamba Intel Africa Limited, and he's a youth innovator. So we'll have that voice of the youth. And then finally, we have Dr. Simon Derito, who's a senior lecturer and academic director in the agribusiness programs at Strathmore University Business Schools, one of my colleagues in the institution. So welcome to our panelists. The order I'll proceed in is the order in which I've done the introduction. So I'll try and keep it very, very tight. I request all the panelists to turn on their videos. And we start with Dr. Cherogoni. You've got 3 minutes. What's your reaction to everything you've had this morning? Karibu sana. We can almost see, yeah, we can see you now, and then you just turn on the microphone. I think you're muted.
Okay.
Good, we can hear you. 3 minutes, Dr. Cherogoni.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for this particular opportunity. I think for me and where I sit there, it's very exciting then to be part of this interesting section. Thank you, Honorable PS. Thank you, Dean Njenga, for that particular participation. My take then is like really, with technology and climate change all over, then really it's a high time we really come out strong and support this particular sector. Again, we've come out very strongly, the role it plays in the GDP, and what better way than actually to see to it that actually sits very, very strongly on among with the other sectors. From where I sit, Agricultural Development Corporation, please not Africa, Agricultural Development Corporation, we've worked quite, we've had a very long history in the issues of breeding livestock, both dairy and beef. And what we've actually, and what we really look forward then is being very, very supportive to the private sector to see to it that animals for purposes of breeding are availed quite strongly. We, with the help of government, of course, we've started our ADC Livestock Genetics Center, the second breeding station in the country. And we really look forward in trying to play a big role. ADC also has got these capabilities to support in the unique technology embryo transfer, and we really look forward to actually helping more farmers to actually participate in that particular sector. With the land we have, and it has come out very strongly in other forums, we are able then to come out and support on fodder production. Fodder and feed in generally is one of those particular challenges which come to the sector and the livestock. And we are working very strongly, and for example, then even drought have been predicted. We really want to see that this particular time round, we are able then to support the sector to actually see that no animals get to be lost in that particular process. So in brief, we are very proactive, and we really look forward to getting ideas, getting proposals, supporting some of the policies being implemented, and see to it that actually we walk the talk rather than just being appear to have actually talked quite a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Cherogoni. You've done it exactly in 3 minutes. My sincere apologies. It's the Agricultural Development Corporation, not the African Development. I apologize for that. Thank you. David Miner, 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Martin. I think it's good to mention that 2 years ago, we had a session with the same session, but I think that was SME routable through the PDU and the Ministry of Trade. So the points that we raised about dairy, because for me, I'm focusing on dairy, transitioning dairy sector, they are the same points that we are raising here. And listening to the PS, Harry Kimchai, and also the Honorable CS, I would like to just point straight to the areas which I think there has been less operational breakthroughs. Because I think listening to the PS speech, it looks like we have done very well in terms of strategic level interventions, anchoring some of the constraints on law so that we have institutions that are running with them. But then at the end of the day, it's about how do we make it operational? How do we implement? First of all, I didn't hear much about what's happening about the industrial scale fodder production. I'll put a message there. I think Martin will be able to have a look at it if there's a chance for the PS to give a response about that. Because at our level of production, with cows producing 7 to 9 liters, and that's according to the report presented last year by Kenya Dairy Board through Margaret, the MD, 7 to 9 liters, I think we are headed for milk imports, whether we like it or not. And I think we may not be able to afford that, looking at how much money is going to food imports. If we add milk to that, I think we have serious problems with food security and serious problem with the strength of currency. Then 2, I also didn't hear what effort we are doing to reduce the import on concentrate feed components. That is more of an opportunity for import substitution. So, and that has to be countered by, again, industrial level of domestic production of all components that are being used for making concentrate feeds. I think that with the rising of dairy in Uganda and Tanzania, we must begin to see that we are headed for a very bad position as far as availability of concentrate feeds are concerned. And this is actually part of what makes our dairy very expensive, because we have no much control about how much we spend on concentrate. And we have to give them because we have improved genetics, and fodder alone, especially given the kind of fodder we have, cannot be able to challenge these genetics to produce optimally. Then I also needed to hear something about skills. I'm aware of the government program on the internship, which is happening mainly for the vet, but also in 2018, we raised the issue of are we able to integrate agribusiness skills or agricultural skills among the listed vocational skills, so that we're not just looking at out of school youth coming from university and colleges, but also those who have not gone too far after basic education, because those can be very suitable labor for the rural economy. Otherwise, the guys who've been to diploma and degree level might not be the most suitable labor for that person who has 5 cows and they are aging and they need somebody to work at the farm. So is there any plans to be able to have the same government-supported internship for non-vet agrics who are out of school? Then 4, and this is second last, is about the fodder seed development. Again, I had a chance to explain to the team at the PDU 2 years ago, and we discussed this in detail. I don't know, is there any effort going on and which perhaps the PS could be aware about developing our seed quality, collaborations with international seed companies who can work with our local seed companies to ensure that we have the same grasses that South Africa has, or some of the leading dairy economies in Europe that they are having, because we seem to be nearly at par on genetics, but we are very far behind on production, which basically explains that our feed quality, our fodder quality is very low. Are we doing something to either breed it locally or to be able to import those seeds? And if it's importing, are we reviewing the fodder seed importation policy so that we allow it to be more, to allow us to be able to import without having to go through a lot of hassle introducing such varieties into our country? And then finally, I think, so that I'm within the 3 minutes that you gave me, Martin, is about data. Are we able to have we worked out any efforts on data? Because number 1 to 4 of my presentation will not be possible if we don't have the profiling of how our dairy landscape looks like. And that has to be county by county. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, David. And actually what you're able to do was introduce some of the opportunities and challenges. So I think you've been able to encapsulate those. Dr. Peacock, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Martin, and delighted to be involved in this conversation. I want to focus on one thing only, and that is the high level of mortality of livestock in this country, particularly in the arid and semi-arid areas. And the fact that because we are losing up to 30, in some cases more, livestock every year from unnecessary deaths, this cannot make a competitive industry. The value of livestock in this country is about $8 billion. It's massively significant, and yet we lose over $1 billion a year, every year. Most of those losses can be prevented through vaccination and basic good animal husbandry. Low vaccination rates are critical here. Vaccination rates are less than 10%, probably in most species significantly less. The gap between the asset value and these losses is filled by a lot of drugs being pumped into animals, and there's a lot of misuse causing public health concerns as well as animal health concerns. And for us to be a competitive industry, we have to get rid of these lossage and wastage in the industry. I've calculated that the vaccine business in Kenya has the potential to be a $200 million a year business. Everyone in the industry knows that Kevavapi, the parastatal, which has a quasi-monopoly on ruminant vaccine, is struggling at the moment. It desperately needs investment in upgrading its facilities, and frankly, it needs private sector management in both production and distribution to develop commercial models of vaccine delivery. So my proposal is to privatize Kevavapi. Kevavapi hasn't been mentioned so far on this call. It's quite remarkable to me that this has not been raised so far. I know it is a strategic institution in the country. It doesn't stop the government of Kenya holding a significant shareholding if the laboratory was privatized. But I feel that the Kevavapi could be a major manufacturing industry, not just for Kenya, but also for the region, for East and Central Africa. Kenya always works best when the private sector is allowed to succeed, and frankly, where the government gets out of the way. I think in the vaccine business, which has barely begun in this country, we have a huge potential here, both as a business opportunity itself and for export as well. But it would underpin the improved competitiveness of the industry. All the other factors I agree with, feed and all that, but this disease control factor, the losses and wastage in the industry at the moment needs to be addressed. So I would propose and reiterate the privatization of Kavavapi.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Peacock. So I think similar with David Miner, you've been able to include a recommendation in there. Thank you for sticking to those 3 minutes. Dr. Mujibi.
Thank you, Martin, for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone who's here in this call, the PS and everybody else. Now, when you look at the Kenya poverty map and superimpose it onto the livestock map, there's a clear march, right? Can you hear me? Sorry?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Just continue.
Yeah, so if you superimpose the livestock map and the poverty map, they sort of intersect. And you can see there's higher poverty, perhaps, in the places where we have high livestock numbers. And that should basically guide our conversation as we go. And the presentation that we have seen today is very good, shows that the institutional and organizational and the policy frameworks that are required to make livestock successful have actually been put in place. But in my view, there are certain other things that I think we needed to hear more about so that post-COVID we can make livestock successful. And for this discussion, I'm going to focus on the monogastrics, right? Poultry and pigs, for example. Now, why poultry and pigs? Because these are the ones which have a direct competition to human food. So when you're thinking about food competition, you're thinking about chickens, you're thinking about pigs, because they basically consume that which the humans or us would consume. Kenya as a country, we are food insufficient. Yeah, we are perhaps producing up to 70% of our food requirements. So there's a need to have a deliberate link between agricultural production of the grains that are required for livestock and livestock production itself for the monogastric. So there needs to be synchrony. These two things need to speak to one another. And as my friend here, David, has spoken about, it all comes to certain things to do with seeds. It all comes to the deliberate effort to try and synchronize, right, the inputs that we require. And I saw the PS talked about an authority to deal with the inputs. But I also fear that a lot of these authorities and institutions may actually.
Okay, I think we may have lost Dr. Mujibi. Oh,
Hello,
Mujibi,
can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. You have about 30 seconds. Sorry, we lost you briefly.
Yeah.
You're talking about the authority.
Yeah, so I think that some of those authorities perhaps may stifle private sector activity. Now, 3 things that I think are required. Number 1, capacity development. I'm sitting in a county office right now, and I can say on the ground things are different because we need farmers to have capacity to actually produce. And it doesn't seem that there is capacity at the lower levels to actually intersect and bring the know-how of the farmer to the level where it needs to be. So extension, how do we take care of extension? The other thing is, if you talk to any farmer, the thing that they're really struggling with is financing. What is the plan of the government to support the farmers on financing? All the good things, all the good plans we have, if we can't put the crops, the livestock into the hands of the farmer, then there's a problem there. The productivity we are seeking might not come through. And then lastly, we got issues to do with the marketing system. We need to be able to predict the market. Right now, we cannot be able to predict the market. And people are producing without knowing what market they're targeting. And so those issues of how do we deal with the market, and I'm not very sure that the products and marketing board will really help at the lower level. So we need to figure out things like, commodity exchanges, structured markets, market forecasting at the lowest level, how those are going to work to be able to make this successful. So number 1, we need to deliberately link agriculture and livestock production. We need to be able to ensure that we minimize this food competition by producing on the agricultural side in a synchronized way to the livestock, and perhaps we will have a chance to compete with other monogastric production units in the world. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Mujibi. Similar with Dr. Peacock and David Miner, you've been able to make specific recommendations. Jane Ngige, from KEPSA. Karibu. And I hope Jane is able to unmute and we can see her on video. Or if she's not ready, I'll cue Jane and maybe we hear first from Elisha Bwatuti. Bwana Bwatuti, Shamba Intel, the voice of the youth.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Karibu, yes. Karibu sana, and then we'll go back to Jane.
Cool. So I'll just categorize my discussion into three. That is pre-production, production, and post-production. Myself being a farmer on the ground, I can tell you what is happening right now as we speak. And I'll start by the training, or rather the courses that are relevant to animal production. And you find most of our institutions, I'm based in Kajiado, and here where we have a majority of livestock in the country, there's little training that is ongoing, especially to youths. And also that encouragement through media that will encourage youth. Myself, my background is in computer science, and livestock I got in out of interest and based on training, small trainings that I've been getting, and I've been on the learning. However, you find for the youths, this message has not been really well communicated. Most of the youths, you find them going for the crops, especially for the export market, short crops, but for livestock, not much attention has been given, especially for the youth. It has been known for a retirement kind of a project. Secondly, I'll talk about bias in breeding auctions, and I'm glad PS is here. And I've had an opportunity of going to this breeding auction, or rather these breeding sites, where you find there's a bias in how these breeds, the good breeds that are said to be coming from outside, from South Africa. And you find the farmers are not well sensitized and announced to on when they should be able to come and get this breed. So you find a director in one of these organizations decides to take almost half of the breed lot to his own personal farm. Therefore, you find farmers like us, when we go there, we wait. Like right now, I'm still waiting almost 3 years down the line from Caldro and Naivasha for Saiwal and Frisian breeds, crossbreed. Therefore, you find there is a challenge right there, even as we are talking about breeds. In production, I can just mention something about very expensive and inefficient extension services. Myself here in Kajiado, I can tell you funds are being given to the county government to ensure that they are actually offering the support services. But extension service provider who's at Magadi and is not being facilitated for transport and even accommodation, how is it supposed to work? Therefore, you find this allocation of how the funds go in terms of supporting the farmers here at the county level, it's very skewed. And if there is some supplementation that the national government can do, that will help. The last in production is watersheds. Here in Kajiado, we find even as NGOs and government are coming up to put up watersheds, they're even biased. So whether you know the chief or you don't know the chief will determine whether you'll get a silanga sunk or this dam sunk in your property. But is there more coordinated way where we can get more watersheds? Because again, with this livestock, without water is almost possible to be very successful. Lastly, in the post-production, I can't fail to mention about too many licenses and over-taxation and very little output of the other end. I hope I shared some documents, which I hope maybe will be shared to the audience and public, which have been able to compute a simple dairy value chain where a person who's producing almost 500 liters of yogurt on a daily basis, the kind of income that you're talking about and expenses, you're talking about expenses close to 12.3 million in a whole year. And the revenue, or rather the profit this person is left with for expansion, you're talking about 2.6 million. Therefore, you're talking roughly around 100,000 per month. So a person who's at this kind of scale and is talking about this kind of money, then you find there's very little incentives and even encouragement for youths to actually get into this. And finally, just to break it off, it's too many brokers in the market. Myself, when I go to the market, I suffer a lot because you find brokers who are there, and especially these are youths, they find the easy way out is just to broker in between the farmer and the market. Therefore, if you can have more farmer-led kind of markets in partnerships with the private sector and the private sector and the public, it will be very easy to ensure that farmers have a priority to ensure that their goods are sold and they get the maximum profits.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elisha. Again, you've been able to give your recommendations in those 3 stages. So I'll allow us to go direct to reactions. Jane Gige, are you still with us? Have you been able to connect?
I am now.
Okay.
I did my connectivity at one point. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Now, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the organizers of this forum. It's been fantastic, and there's been a lot to learn, and particularly the submissions from the PS, Bwana Hari, who we have been working together quite a lot through ASNET. My intervention would be to say that ASNET is a forum that actually brings the private sector and the government together, but also other stakeholders, particularly in the area of development agencies. And the whole idea is that we would like to provide a coordination mechanism whereby we can talk about reduced or improved coordination, harmonization of approaches when we get to the farmers, and also to the to all the value chain players along the whole of the value chain. And then here really focusing on productivity and ensuring that the scarce resources that are available to us as a country are utilized optimally, because a lot of times you'll find that a lot of organizations are sort of working at the same agenda, at the same destination, and very often confusing the farmers. Yet, as we have heard today, there's a lot of need, particularly in the area of skills development, the area of upgrading of facilities, and the area of value addition. Just like to add that at ASNET, we do have a specific chapter for the youth. And we realize this is because we realize that the youth have a different approach to development, and they're looking at systems from a different perspective, and would like to give them the space to be able to exercise their innovation, their knowledge, to serve the kind of consumer that we have of tomorrow, the kind of consumer that we need to look at the different lifestyles they have and to come up with the different products that will meet their need. So just to mention that, would like to welcome all the players to come on board to work with ASNET. The membership is made up of BMOs, associations, cooperatives, and one of the aspirations is to strengthen these BMOs and these cooperatives so that they can also provide value-added services to their members. We do not want to deal with the individual players in the market. We'd like to do so through their aggregates, because that way we can get straight to the ground. I think that is it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Jane, and thank you also for the broader platform you're offering through the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. And we hope it's a partnership, particularly on this topic, we can continue carrying together. Our regards to the leadership at KEPSA.
Thank you.
Karibu sana. Dr. Nderito, just before I give you the last word, since everybody was able to highlight their issue, I wanted to go to Dr. Cherogoni. Dr. Cherogoni, do you have one thing that you would like to recommend, either a challenge or an opportunity on behalf of the Agricultural Development Corporation? After this session, I'll just hand back to Laban Cliff for the Q&A and then the closing. And we'll give the PS and the Dean the final word for all the issues that have been raised. Dr. Cherogoni, any one thing, one issue, one opportunity, one challenge? Good, we can see you, we can hear you.
Okay. I think mine will just be to emphasize the fact that, much as we would like many actors, especially on the side of dairy, to actually then participate in production, the issues of breeding still stands out very strongly, that it's not been well articulated. What is very evident, and everybody knows, is the kind of animals out there are been very low producing animals. And to us, the opportunities then is right to actually use technology then to have very high producing animals, which then makes economical sense for farmers then to keep. And for sure, as long as we don't address the issues breeding, then we forever be going round in cycles, as the quality of the animals will not be the ones then which will take us forward. So some of the opportunities then available, and especially then, and I think I emphasized earlier, the embryo transfer technology, for example, will then take us in a very, very big way. The other area also on the line of breeding is then data around the artificial insemination, AI services. We all appreciate much as we are doing quite a lot of work. we are not then able to monitor the kind of performance in the field of the semen which has been used. So my take then is like we really need to go out of our way to actually even monitor the performance of the AI technicians. Then from there, then monitor the performance of the animals which have actually been bred, and support the animals in such a way that really at the end of the day, we have them very productive. Of course, this is ties up very well with the level of management, availability of feed and so forth. So really that should be well tied up nicely. For me, and even where I sit there, it's a high time that, and we've actually had very good initiatives even by the Dairy Board and a few other actors to see to it that there is even competition around AI services, so that then the counties and even individuals and organizations then can appreciate where they stand, and that way then we get room for correction and improvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cherogoni. David Mine, I also rushed you on the tail end. I'll just give you a chance to give one opportunity. You had already articulated if you're to prioritize all those, just one, and then we go to Dr. Nderito.
Okay. I think I don't want to emphasize data because that's more of an enabler rather than a core action. And I think that's ongoing. I've had a bit of efforts around that at the Office of the Deputy President. But I think I would like to say what is happening right now is we have rising costs, and therefore from the people who supply the most milk, the smallholders, dairy is becoming not viable and they're shutting down. So I would say number one would be industrial production.
Okay. Thank you very much, David. That was precise and to the point. So let me use that opportunity. Dr. Nderito, I think you're still with us. So you get your 3 minutes, and then Cliff, you'll be ready on standby to do the Q&A, and maybe we can float all the questions, and those can be captured by the PS and the Dean in his closing remarks. Dr. Nderito.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin, and all the speakers who have spoken before me now. Good points, and I'll not repeat any of the points. Just to wrap up on the issues you have raised on the challenge. So as a livestock economist, I see our main challenge is that demand is increasing for livestock product, and productivity is either constant or even going down. Okay, and that's a problem on its own. So we currently have a current deficit of over 300 metric tons of meat deficit in this country. So how do we solve, and with all these other challenges of climate change, so how do we bring around now solutions that will sort us out? So through our research in the business school, we have been trying to figure out the profitability of these feedlot programs. I am happy the PS mentioned about it. They are thinking about it in the ministry, and we'll be happy to engage more on the profitability of this program and the viability of the feedlot programs. Because one, they are capital intensive, and they are quite hard for pastoralists, for example, to be able to take them up. So the question then comes, how do we come up with a model that will bring the private sector investor who has the money to invest in the feedlots? And then also we have the pastoralists who are the people who want to increase their resilience, their food security concern that we have, and also the same issue that George mentioned about their culture, how we bring out the pastoralists, we bring to their way of life that the pastoralists can become a good business for them. And yet now they become the breeding stock to feed the animals that are needed by the feedlots. And there you'll form a very good market system solution. But we also have to go back to the question that some of my speakers, like David has mentioned, the issue of feeds is too expensive. So currently we did some numbers sometimes back, and we found that the current feeding model that we have for feedlots is taking, mostly they get animals of around 200 kilos in a feedlot. They take around 6 kg per day, and a kilo is 34 shillings. That goes to 204 shillings per day an animal is consuming, just a single animal. Now, if you didn't get this animal in the market, and the current, by that time we're doing the research, the live weight prices for animals was 150, yet you're spending 204 shillings to fatten that animal. Doesn't make business sense. And then we realized that, but if we get these feedlots to produce animals that are of high quality for the high market, then they can go for over 180 shillings kg or 200 shillings now live weight per kg, and there now they can make business sense. But now we have to ask ourselves, which market are we working for? Because the feedlot model that we have currently in Kenya, they're only targeting the high-end market, because that's the one that can justify the business model for the expensive feed they're using. So, and we need different models that work for the different markets for meat to meet this deficit that we have in the country. And that's something we are trying to work on. We are working with the livestock specialists. Actually, they are part of our student in the Masters of Management program. And we're trying to see how that will help us to get the feedlot program in the country work for different regions in the country. And we are happy to engage more on that conversation. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Nderito. And that was a good way of encapsulating, because our programs at Strathmore, academics or the bachelor's, master's, doctoral level, as well as the executive education programs, I think a lot of the data and the insights we are getting are exactly what is needed to enrich. I hand back over to you, Laban. I see Dr. Njenga and PS, Honorable Kim Tai, are on standby. A lot of interesting feedback from the experts. We may not be able to incorporate everything in the interest of time. Dr. Njenga, sorry, we've run over by a few minutes, but over to you, Laban, and then I'll touch base again as we wind up.
Thank you, Martin, and great moderation there. To our speakers, please kindly bear with us. I know when our moderators are cutting you short, you might feel like you did not quite say all that you wanted to, but let's see what we get through with this. And I think it's been really great to hear some of the points, some repeated, but also showing the interest of it. So I think Bwana PS and Dr. Njenga, I think the task is on you to kind of group this and kind of give us a way forward as we throw it to you. I'm reading out these questions, not so that we respond to them per se here on this call, I mean, but also to mean that when you will register, we have your emails and we have them on our database. I'm advised by the organizers that we will be getting back to you. And of course, kind of, as we mentioned again, hopefully have a paper of this discussion. So I'm mentioning this question so that we can kind of actually have it that we've received them and somebody will actually look at them and will respond to you. So here goes. What measures has the government put in place now and for the future to enhance local availability for quality animal feed, raw materials, lower animal feed costs, and improve livestock farmers? That's post COVID-19. Please talk. I really hope the directors under the State Department for Livestock are also quite attentive on this ones as well. Please talk about how we can reduce production cost for farmers in Kenya and increase quality of livestock products as for human consumption and better returns. Then how can aspiring livestock exporters effectively participate in trade, just looking at value addition and export trade? How can farmers get assistance on appropriate technology on breed improvement, breed tracking, and feeding system? 5 is how can farmers get resources and services like animal identification and traceability, radio frequency identification, that's RFID. We're looking at pregnancy diagnosis, that's through ultrasound technique and disease diagnosis labs by building sub-county breed resource centers. I'm happy you mentioned about the counties as well. We had a great representation and also reviews as well from the counties team. What are the funding options that is, and for support available for startup dairy farmers in Kenya? I think Elisha Bwatuti, you mentioned that, and having been a key player in this sector. How can starting farms be guided in marketing their produce so that they can get maximum revenues from their investments? 8 is what is financial institutions' role in absorbing shocks and losses insurance and supply chain monitoring of red flagged suppliers? I like how Dr. Nderito said that. How do you make the sector bankable, basically? And of course, that will come in with the data that comes out of this sector, so that banks can also come in. Farmers input various genetics of goats and sheep to Kenya. Farmers import various genetics, that is of goats and sheep to Kenya. However, I have noticed there's no record tracking of imported breeds, and this may create inbreeding. How have we tackled this? 11 is Somalia is failed state, but our camels from FCDC counties are taken in droves to Mogadishu for sale. what is a failed state doing right that a democratic and a developing country like Kenya can do? I wouldn't want to refer Somalia as failed state, but you just want to ask, in comparison to Somalia, how then can Kenya make its livestock sector productive? If I made that question as well. 13 is how best can we livestock sector have commercialized present as a business? How can we have a business case for the livestock sector? That's largely the question. How can the State Department ensure regulation does not stifle the sector the same way it did to sugar sector? That's arguable. And then sometimes too many regulations create bureaucracies. That's what you say. So it's basically about regulatory framework. Then what strategic objectives does the State Department have to make for frontier counties? That's to make them disease-free and export their livestock. Still talking about the export farming. And of course, Madam Jim Ngigi spoke about ASNET. How do we give significance to local butcheries in the country? What efforts are in place to ensure the formalization of the meat processing? So this is just to say that those are some of the questions I will have the team respond to us on email as well. And of course, the Dr. Njenga and Bwana PS are here to encapsulate some of those reactions that we've gotten. If you allow me, Martin, there's a lady I think who's been raising her hand, I think from this time we began. That's Madam Sarah Walusimbi. I don't know if Madam Sarah Walusimbi is here. Her hand has been up, and I mentioned that we were gonna give her a chance. So maybe just to get a reaction, because I remember we were live on TV, we will be live on YouTube as well. So it will be just great to actually show that representation. I don't know if Sarah Walusimbi is there.
Yes, I've seen she's just raised her hand. Caroline will need to usher her into the conversation. Caroline,
yes, she's in.
Okay.
All right, Sarah, this is your moment to, in just about 15 seconds, please pose your question.
Thank you for the opportunity and all the presentations. What I wanted to ask actually has already been answered during the conversation, so I have no more questions.
Will you largely talk about what topic it was on?
No, it was a general question, and it was actually about the middleman position, how middlemen take advantage of the farmer, but it was covered in the discussion.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for your patience as well, even as we embarked on this. So over to you, gentlemen. Martin, how long are we keeping our PS and Dr. Njenga?
Yeah, so maybe in the interest of time, if we can also do just 3 minutes, 3 minutes each, just to be respectful of time. The beauty is everything is recorded, and there'll be more opportunities. We are hoping this is not the first of a series. So it's just a reaction to everybody, and then we'll give them a minute each for their closing remarks.
Over to you, gentlemen. Dr. Njenga, perhaps you can start.
Very glad to start, though I wanted to finish so that I can say thank you to PS Hari Kimtai, but fine. I'll leave
maybe
that.
Let me start then, Dr. Hari. Let me start then.
Thank you, sir.
I think thank you for Dr. Njenga for giving me the opportunity to start. I want to say that thank you inputs in relation to this very important topic that we captured today. And I think my team has been here and they have captured all the issues. They are all very relevant to us. And if you look at what we have been trying to articulate, if we add to what the comments you've given us, I so believe we are going to drive it to the next level. And I want to just mention to Dr. Cheragon that indeed, that's why the recent government invested additional facility at your institution so that you are able to support the livestock farmers from that region. Now, the government can only do to that extent, but again, the space is still there for the private sector to come on board. So it is really important that we work together so that we ensure that the gaps that do exist within the government undertakings are taken care of by the private sector. Now, I like the issue of fodder and fodder production at the commercial level. And I want to mention to Kimani that if you go to the areas now like Trans Nzoia County, Uasin Gishu County, there are very many farmers who have started venturing into fodder production. And they're even doing the wrapping of silage to be able to now take it to other regions that will be able to be traded as any other product. I think the government through GIZ brought this concept, and it has been well taken. So there's a lot of investment in that sector. I know of one company like agribusiness that has been really doing very well in supporting livestock farmers in production of silage, and also one other company called Ndororuto. So we've had field days with the farmers, and they have been taken through on how to do silage production, further production to support the dairy and to support the livestock sector. The issue of Kivawapi mentioned by Dr. Peacock, I want to agree with you 100%. That is really a big opportunity for the country. And I think if you look at what you are doing currently, we have put Kivawapi under the livestock bill so that we're able to, first of all, have it stand in or anchored within the law. Then if they want to venture into partnership, strategic partnership with other partners, then there is a law that will be able to support them for that. So I think what the ministry and the department has been doing specifically is to come up with a legal framework to support investments in various different sectors within the livestock. So that is one of the reasons why we had to have this livestock bill taken care of. To take care of such kind of institutions. Yes, there is need for us to deliberately work very closely with the crops department, because again, on the issue of fodder, on the issue of seeds, we have Calro, and they have developed a lot of seeds. The challenge is the commercialization of these seeds. The private sector have not come on board to commercialize these seeds and ensure that there's production of pasture. So what is the research that you have done has just remained within our research institutions. They have not gone out through commercialization. So we really need to have this engagement very closely. And I'm happy that we've started this triple helix program that will now be looking at the gaps and what the government is doing. And then this is brought to the platform of the private sector to take advantage of these advantages and research that the government has invested money. On the marketing systems where the brokers come in, yes, that's why we are trying to come up with the marketing board to regulate, to look at some of these products where if there are brokers that are coming in, how are these brokers regulated? Can they be brought within the value chain system so that they also play their role in terms of marketing of the products? So we must have a regulatory authority to guard that and to come up with the proper regulations. Now, the challenge is the private sector has been complaining that we are over-regulating the sector. We are saying, fine, we must have regulation in the sector. And if we are over-regulating, please come up and tell us which areas, specify areas. We, as my CS said today, the government is ready to listen. We are ready to change those regulations within a short time and then allow the sector to thrive. So our interest is not to overregulate the sector. Our interest is to provide regulation in the sector. And if it's overregulated, then we can still reduce those regulations. So I so believe that that's what we are doing. The issue that brought up by Batuti is true. I like the issue of pre-production, production, post, and then training of the youth. Yes, that's why our institutions now are there to train the youth. We have said we want to ring fence our institutions within a certain framework that they can get funding from our national treasury without any challenge. So we'll be able to train this youth to make sure that they have the competent skills. And as I said, we have already put them under what's called the TVET programs. You don't need to have the qualification. What you need to have is a competence. If you have shown competence, if you have shown interest, that you have that particular skill that you can venture into that particular sector, you don't need to have it is just a question of competence. And therefore, that's why we are trying to make sure that we have our institutions anchored in the law as well and under the TVET Act. Now, I think what Jane has said is very clear. There is already tremendous improvement, tremendous collaboration between the private sector and CAPTCHA through the ASNET. Now, if this platform is engaged further and we now bring more sector players to this, I think the challenges that we are facing in the entire agriculture sector will be resolved. And once we do this, then we'll be able to move the sector to the next level. I like what Nderitu has said on the issue of the climate change and looking at the production systems that you are trying to develop, the feedlot, for example. You see, the feedlot is basically there to support the pastoralist because some of our rangelands are getting depleted. One, because they are staying with animals for a longer period. And when they stay with animals for a longer period, our rangelands get depleted. Number two, is drought outbreak, then they lose a lot of animals. So what we are trying to do is to start engaging the private sector operators of the feedlots and the communities that are in pastoral areas, so that there is the synergy between the two. They don't need to keep the animals until they die. They can take it to the feedlot area and it is sold. So that is what we are trying to develop. And I think we are now currently working on one model that is in Baringo County, where we are using our government farm to develop the model. But again, it is not government run. It is private run. So that is the kind of model. The community itself must be engaged. So that is what we are trying to do, so that we integrate the community with the investors. We integrate the community with those who want to operate the feedlot systems. So you can see the issue of capacity building. We have got to do a lot as a government. Our role is to do capacity building, and we are ready for it. We shall continue doing that. But what is important is that we need the private sector to come on board. The moment the private sector comes on board, then our engagement will now be good, because our policies will be driven by the sector needs. At the moment, we are trying to do it, and sometimes we fail. We fail to capture the sector needs. So we need the private sector to come on board so that we capture the sector needs and we amend our regulations, we amend our policies accordingly so that they can drive the sector. That is basically what I can say in response to what the panelists have said. But the comments from the panelists, they're up to date, and I think our team has captured. We shall continue engaging further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bwana PS. I appreciate it. And I'll still reiterate, I think, what you mentioned again, the call for strong alliances, strong associations to support the sector. I think all our partners who are on board on this call will take that as a rallying call to have that. So, Bwana Njenga, it's over to you now to wrap it up.
Bwana PS, I want to say just how much I appreciate for you being here, taking your time from your busy schedule. I don't know how to explain my feeling for that service to society orientation, which is our spirit. I want to say thank you, sir, very deeply, very, very deeply. I want to thank the colleagues in the panel, and especially KEPSA, especially ADC and Maurice Cherongony, my faculty. I see Fidali, Simon Nderitu, Elisha Bwatuti. I know all of you are doing your own thing, but you often come to help me teach. I see David Maina and the dairy sector. I want to thank you. And all the team behind there in the PDU and in Strathmore. As a dean, I just feel so moved by that. Now, you see, when we live here, there must be guiding questions. The first is that, why are we interested in livestock? Why did we bother to come here and discuss with the PS, with the CS about livestock? It's because we have 2 million population that depends on pastoral livestock and who depend on livestock as an income. And this is going to increase if you cross the border to Somalia or Ethiopia, or to the desert lands of Saudi Arabia, which is importing most of our meat here. Almost nearly half. So here, we are not here because purely we want a perfect law. Purely we want profit only. I think we are here because we have 2 million of our people directly involved in that. Directly. Indirectly, everybody, because we need meat. So let's be very clear about goals. if we go simply to the profit motive, we will have made a big mistake. The first thing is take care of the population. Make sure that our population moves from poverty to a reasonable livelihood. In that, we will make, and I'll show you why, which is the second point, all right? Productivity. Dr. Simon Derito, the boss of the agribusiness department, has said it. We are short of 300 metric tons. Basically, Bwana PS, this is the point. When you are an ordinary private sector guy, what you're thinking is, if I have 2 acres of land or 10 acres of land, and the average in Kenya is 5 to 6 acres for a person, what is the highest profit I am going to get from this piece of land? That's a question. And there are no two ways about it. So if I want to get that 2 or 10 acres of land to give me the highest profit, then livestock has to have a meaning. And I must compare it from the point of view of strategy as a private sector guy. And we are the ones, as private sectors, I say now that as a business person, we are the people who will push the blood to the whole community. Government cannot do that unless we become communists. And you know that system is not very good. So we have to incentivize the farmer to feel that it is worth it, and for the pastoralists to feel that they are part of government. They are not left to the wild castle rustling, corruption, inept movement of finances and so on. So that's the second issue. The third issue, it is clear that feedlots, medicine, and business services are lacking. I was going to Oloitokitok, Bwana PS, and I saw these vast Maasai ranches that are based on community management. And I was thinking of Bachuma and now what you're doing about feedlots. Probably, we have to strengthen what is already there and train what is already there. So we don't look for a greenfield of capacity building. Probably the best thing is to select all the community ranches and just go directly to them, and make sure that within the next 2-3 years, we have trained the entire capacity, we have shown them how to be governed well. We cannot be always starting from a greenfield, whereas the very places where we could have the feedlots in the community ranches, we are doing nothing. Now, I know it is a political issue, but I know that if we really make an effort directly, Bwana PS, we can go straight to those ranches and affect our communities directly, and we have killed this elephant in the room in quite a short time. The last thing that probably I have forgotten in a very big way is the Presidential Delivery Unit. Now, why this coordination ministry? Why this system? Well, because you need to coordinate. And therefore, what should we take forward from this environment and this way of thinking? Number one, I think it was Patricia W. I don't know what W stands for. Patricia asks, if I am a farmer, where do I go to? Now, I suggest the following. First of all, from the point of view of this platform, Simon Derito and my deputy Angela, I know she's not here, she's somewhere else under the SME, SEDEC, Strathmore Enterprise Development Center. What we need to do is to give solutions to SME, or rather smallholder farmer networks, so that we can increase productivity per acre from one place instead of going individually to so many, many people. The second one is this, Bwana PS, and I pray that, yes, put the law, but make sure that when a small farmer or when a cooperative.
Jenga, I lost you. Maybe you repeat that one because it was direct to me.
Yes, this is directed to you, Bwana PS. Yes, that it is good to make the law, because obviously you need a minimum of quality control and all those things you have said about origination, certificates of origination, and where you can trace traceability. Very good. But for a person who is 5 acres, who is the average farmer, if they have to walk to NSSF 7th floor, if they have to walk to your office cooperative building, if they have to walk to the police, if they have to walk to NEMA, if they have to walk, you know, there are 15 offices. And the cost just isn't reasonable. So my suggestion to you, every county in the next 1.5 years, and it is not so difficult, sir, we put a Huduma Center for agriculture for your office, because 3/4 of our population depend on it directly. A Huduma Center, where a person wants to get something, they go there. It's one-stop shop. They pay one fare. They rent one room. And inside that Huduma Center, for agriculture in totality, okay, you may have a separate one for livestock. But in agriculture, livestock, everything, I can walk in there and see this department and go in there and select it. And frankly speaking, we are ready to help you set it up. Because this one-stop shop for a person saves you time and clarity, gets you a lot of clarity. And then linked to those centers are consultants. So you don't need to do all the consultancy, sir. You can allow the private sector to go and help the farmers or the cooperatives properly. Soil, food, feedlots, and so on, quality assurance and so on, all in one place. Those things the government can do, well, let the consultants do, and let the private sector pay for them. That way they're incentivized to do it well, to get profit. Otherwise you'll be giving profit to the hands of people, and that won't work. Let the people themselves sort themselves out. But you make sure that the conducive environment is so good that they can go there and get solutions, not have to come to Nairobi and start wondering, which office do I go to? And with that, I want to say that you SME networks who are here today, how do you unite yourselves? How many of the dairy farmers are properly united? Now I know Bwatuti there and his networks, but are they networks of real business or networks of politicking? Because if they're networks of politicking, you'll never do business. But if they're networks of business, you will be associated and you'll be going to Harry Kimutai's office and you'll tell him, Harry, we are 10,000 farmers, so listen to us. We need you to listen to us. Thank you very much. PDU, asante sana.
Thank you very much, Dr. Njenga. And those were very, very excellent remarks from yourself and the Principal Secretary. We appreciate. This brings us to the closing portion of the program. And along with Laban Cliff, mine will just be to thank all the participants. So the keynotes from Honorable CS, Honorable PS, and the Dean, as well as our panel of experts, Dr. Cherogoni, David Miner, Dr. Peacock, Dr. Mujibi, Jane Gige, Elisha Bwatuti, and Dr. Nderito. Asanteni sana. And also the team that's working behind the scenes, at least I speak from a Strathmore end. Laban Cliff will discuss the PDU team. We've got the leadership of Strathmore University, and Dr. Njenga recognized the Vice Chancellor for giving us this opportunity. Within Dr. Njenga's team, the Executive Dean's office, there's a whole team behind that. Our Africa Media Hub, our communications office, the agribusiness programs, and our executive education programs, as well as key actors within our academic programs. There's a whole team behind this that has been engaging. And on behalf of Strathmore, from an operational perspective, technical perspective, I just wanted to underscore, we really appreciate this opportunity for evidence-informed policy change, data-driven decision-making, the CES has challenged for this opportunity to continue. Also, this approach of the triple helix of government, industry, and academia in partnership with other key ecosystem actors. And at the very core is the citizen. And then finally, this approach that embraces interest, implementation, and institutions in the context of value chains, looking at the Big Four agenda in the broader context of Vision 2030, and some challenges. What's more important, the process or the results? And also, where do you find that fine balance? So this opportunity to innovate, we anticipate will continue. Laban Cliff will be able to share with us what else is in store. I think there are already topics that have quickly risen up, and we have actors from across the ecosystem engaging in other parts of policy that are interested. And my parting shot will be, as Strathmore, we are really delighted within the Institute of Public Policy and Governance to be able to work with all arms of government, and specifically national government and also the devolved units, through the Council of Governors and the different counties. We sense the voice was heard today. So Dr. Njenga, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for gathering us as a school, as a university, and as the academia to make this opportunity possible, and also for partnering with private sector. And I want to keep singling out KEPSA, specifically Jane Gige, also for representing that voice ever so ably. Over to you, Laban Cliff, to close for us.
Thank you, Martin, and thanks to you as well for being a great co-moderator. I appreciate great teamwork there. I think I would speak on behalf of the President's Delivery team. As I mentioned, I'm in the communications team, and of course work with a great team led by Nixon Ngang as well, who have just been sharing a lot of the updates. And I've just shared our Twitter handles as well, together with the SBS Kenya Twitter handles, where we've just been, sharing information out there to the general public. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have him being here as well to moderate this session. Martin, you threw to me about the next topics. I think what we've had today is a first one of its kind. I mean, I'm told continentally as well, where we're seeing the partnership and the great networks and coming together of minds. So we've discussed about, livestock and touching on the Big Four agenda pillar, rightfully under agriculture. Next series, we are toying around with the idea of the manufacturing and productivity, looking at another pillar of the Big Four, looking at trade and education. So please just make sure you're in touch. And that's why I'm actually shared the Twitter handles as well, but also to everyone who actually shared and logged in as well. We have your email addresses. So it will be nice to actually, we'll be sharing an info pack later on of the video recording as well, and also of the other questions that we mentioned that will be responded to as well. Let me just talk about the President's Delivery Unit. I think, and most of you here perhaps would single out and look at it as a wholesome government. I look at the team here and what the CS actually mentioned. We have been directed, to follow up on these updates. So don't consider it like a talk shop. I think, as you can see, it's to have the PS logged in and his team as well, being here for the last about 4 hours. You can tell the commitment. And I think for us as the delivery unit, we've been charged with that, the responsibility to follow through on this discussion. So the next time we meet, we actually have something solid to present. And I'm happy also that SBS Kenya, SBS, that's the Strathmore University Business School, is also looking towards developing a paper onto this. So definitely something great to look forward to. Now, I want to mention quickly the great team that has been led by, of course, Mr. Andrew Okayu, who's our secretary. You saw him earlier on the call together with the CS. They had to leave for another function. And I also want to single out his deputy as well, Mr. Lee Chonze. Thank you very much for following through a lot on the discussions that have been taking place. And of course, this gentleman could not have done it without the support of these two ladies. I must single out Sheila Waweru, who took the oldest task of leading us, especially internally in the team, to make this possible. That is after Madam Kato Sambili had to go and welcome her bundle of joy. So it's a great honor and a pleasure to see the great teamwork and the great effort that we have at PDU. But last but not least, I want to thank each and every one of you, the participants, all our panelists. On behalf of the PDU team, it's an honor and a pleasure. So asanteni sana, and see you again next time.
All the best, guys.
Goodbye.
Can the technical team stay behind so that we can follow up on certain things? Thank you.